I'll go find her. I think there was still a debate going on about it.
When you guys are set up, if it's possible, is there any way we could scroll these out here? Just to make a little more room. I know it's tight. I'll hold the door for you. And there's a cooler of water out here if you guys want it.
Hey, SP, did you guys do anything with my Dejero? All of a sudden it went into like status mode. It was showing me all. Oh, okay. All right, so I'm gonna hit the back button and. Yeah, so now it says device ready, connections, return video. How do I get out of this back to the? There we go. Yeah, and now it has return video active, which it probably shouldn't. Well, good, I'm glad. Return video off.
We replaced all of our TVs. I think the only good thing is we picked up a few. I want to say we picked up a few.
Well, it's,
We got a couple extra on hand.
it says it's marginal, 2.3 seconds
late
late.
with faster connection. I think our TVs are top notch.
So it's probably gonna drop out.
Megabytes, not something that's get up to 10.
Yeah, I was copied, I think last copy I was 6.
Yeah.
Well, get ready to roll and record, because we're gonna start here in just a minute. Oh, sweet.
Okay, I see what you're talking about. That wasn't in here when I came here.
Well, you're a lot better at this than I am. Bye.
She wanted to make sure everything was okay in here. Yeah, you gotta go.
Don't try to log into FirstCom, because they got bought, and our credentials haven't morphed over yet, apparently.
With the music thing?
Yeah.
I've never used music factor stuff.
I very rarely do. You see where Chanut's leaving?
Yeah. Unfortunately. It's a move that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
It's close to Minneapolis.
3 hours away from his family.
Where's he going?
It's going to Des Moines to be a anchor.
Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh, Iowa, okay. Which station out there? KCI?
I think Casey has Des Moines, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember which
Like
station it was.
WOI.
Okay.
Local 5.
I hope his family's in Minneapolis, and
That's right.
I think that's
He
still
only
the
been with you guys
largest.
for like a year, right? Year and a half?
They've been with
Almost
Tegna.
2 years.
Okay.
At least his one previous station had been Tegna. I don't know if he'd been Tegna before that, but he's been with the company for a while.
Gotcha.
Yeah, one point, I don't know if it's
So they offered him a bunch more money.
He's close to home, so. I lived in Iowa for a couple of years. I was in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
Man, talking about cold weather, man. Holy cow.
That's in college, but I went to college at St. Paul. I had some college buddies that were from Cedar Rapids.
Oh, is that right?
Well, he's from Minneapolis.
once you get to a certain degree, you'll feel it.
We had 4-foot long icicles hanging off the house. The icicles were longer than I was tall.
When I lived in Duluth on Lake Superior, they would have some ice schools in the middle of the winter. They'd be going from the edge of our roof all the way down to the ground. Water just keep dripping all winter, and eventually it gets freeze.
You guys had ice boat racing out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always wanted to try that. It's a little faster on your side.
They don't put me in charge. So just go in
Although
there.
I have to say that
Yeah.
the new America's Cup boats are really freaking fast. I watched the race down at Sydney Harbor. Those guys were hitting 50 miles an hour. At one point, one of those boats hit 80 knots.
Should be. In a minute.
Telling my parents to live now in Minnesota, the world's biggest ice fishing contest.
Oh, yeah.
At least 10,000 people all on the same night. No fish houses, the handshake business. And fish, everyone's outside all day.
No fish houses.
I got this out.
Where'd you at? It's bigger than it looks. It's definitely bigger than it looks. Yeah.
Georgia border.
Biggest market east of Mississippi. Yeah.
And then he goes, it's like 45 minutes away from Green.
It was like when I was in
That
Vegas,
market,
and,
that market actually reaches down to Oconee County in Georgia. And then Townsend Market, and then it goes all the way north to the Tennessee line in places.
It's in blue, right? Or no, it's the white.
when I was in Vegas,
Use the
the phrase was there, our station was, we covered Kern County. It was like a small market area. But that county was so big, that we were going an hour and a half, 2 hours in every direction.
That's Bakersfield.
It's a sad part. You tell people you're moving to California, it's like beach, beautiful stuff. Like 2 hours walk inland in what used to be oil refinery land, San Joaquin Valley, desert, just not to drive. It's a perfect location to live in, something like that. Drive to LA, San Diego, Vegas, everything's within a drive. Monday through Friday.
Sucks.
Translator guy was so
I worked in Grable Spartanburg almost 3 years. JoJo and I worked in Greenville together. Jerry Carnes and I worked at SBA together, the Greenville Bureau. Randy Travis and I worked at YFF together.
Retiring, probably next year or two, I would imagine.
We had an opportunity to steal number 46 a while back. And I walked in and I told the news director, I said, "You need to hire this guy."
Hey, we're
He
done.
told me I was crazy.
Hey, it's not forwarding the phones to you. So, anyway, Andy told me to call you directly. I'm on my bag.
Wherever they're going.
He made the right decision by staying where he did.
Presser on this guy that shot over to the spot.
Well, you know, it beats Harry in the pothole patrol. Harry and I used to work Sunday mornings together when Harry worked at 11.
Cherokee or something, I don't know.
Curious to see what happens when Ray buys it, because you know Green headquarters is and they've never owned a TV station in
I'll be rolling
the
for
market
the
where their headquarters. So, curious to see.
Oh, that's right, this station is for sale, isn't it?
A lot of people are showing me that, but I want to.
5 television stations, some of which did news. Everything was independent.
Want to see my new toy?
Not really.
Doesn't say Lego on it.
Oh, I have one of those.
Do you?
Yeah, Dan gave me one of those. Yours looks like a Zion version.
Thanks.
DJ.
And mine's a nice one too.
Ours is the one we got.
They used to have the GoPro ones that were, but like it was big.
Yeah. I think yours is a slightly different,
It's a
model
different
in the same
version of the
series.
one we
Yeah.
had.
The only thing that kind of sucks about it is when you record it through the app that's associated with it, it makes the files much larger for
Oh,
some
really?
reason. Yeah, it's not recorded in the MOV as you would think because it's
Yeah.
an iPhone. It's not MOV.
I'll look at some of those, I can see if it does that on the one I got.
Well, your phone didn't record in an MOV file format. It's got one of these little funny file extensions that, some of the edit programs don't like. Another early version news cutter that we had way back when, like cell phone video, you had to convert it to get it into an AVI file.
Even Eddie's still does that.
Eddie will edit it.
You know, that.
I take stuff off of my phone and straight into Eddie's all the time. It doesn't work like
Yeah.
XDCAM does, but
There's still sometimes where I run into.
it'll work.
Where it'll give me so many hiccups. If I've done is bring the video in, export it as a file, type in my choosing, bring it back in, and then it'll finally work. It's just hit or miss, like if some random source for storage is some stuff, the video stuff's gonna chunk up on it, and then I gotta convert it.
The problem I have is with stuff off the Android phones.
Maybe that's. Zoom calls, obviously, those people want to convert it to Zoom call before we're done.
Yeah. I gotta think about all that. All that stuff I need for social
And that,
It just drives me.
I think,
we're gonna start in just a minute. I do wanna let you know District Attorney Wallace will come out and make a statement. We have, one victim's family member who will make a statement, and I believe Sheriff Reynolds will make a statement. Nobody will be taking any questions though, okay? We'll start in just a minute.
Are you sure? Okay. If I can, you just tell me.
You're good, thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shannon Wallace, and I'm the Cherokee County District Attorney. I've led this office since 2012 and been a prosecutor for over 19 years. Standing here with me this afternoon are members of my team who've helped prosecute this case: Chief ADA Susan Treadaway, Chief Investigator Dwight Kelly, Senior Investigator William Hegwood, Victim Advocates Shelby Newton and Giselle Villanueva. Also present are Sheriff Frank Reynolds, Lead Detective Daniel Hayes, Lieutenant Garrett Carter, Special Agents Bryant Hill and Sean Burke of the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Present as well are members of the family of Xiaoji Tan and Paul Michaels. On March the 16th, 2021, Robert Aaron Long walked into Young's Asian Massage armed with a loaded 9mm handgun and executed 4 innocent victims and attempted to execute another. Countless lives were forever changed, and our community has been permanently damaged by the horrific assault on our sense of security. Since that day, my office has been in regular contact with those individuals who have been most impacted by this senseless and devastating attack, the surviving victims, and the family members of those murdered individuals. They have been clear and united in their message. Justice and closure are needed now. Today, justice was served and the defendant pled guilty to all the charges in the indictment and was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He was also sentenced an additional 35 years to be served in confinement. Today, the families of those individuals who were viciously murdered and the victims who were shot and placed in fear receive justice. Today, these victims are left knowing that this defendant will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. Today, our community will begin to heal from these unspeakable acts of violence. We live in a close, supportive community here in Cherokee County that's come together to mourn the lives that were lost by this senseless attack. For months since this tragedy, my team and I have gotten to know each of the victims' families. We've listened to their concerns. We've discussed at length the fact that this crime meets the statutory requirements to seek the death penalty, and that my office was prepared to move forward with notice to seek death as the punishment in this case. In our numerous conversations with the families of Ms. Tan, Ms. Fung, Mrs. Yan Gonzalez, Mr. Michaels, and with Mr. Hernandez Ortiz, they made it clear that their desire was for us to resolve this case short of trial and to resolve the case to the sentence that was imposed by the court today. The defendant was merciless in his actions, but the surviving victims and the families of the murdered victims chose to request mercy from the death of this defendant, preferring that this defendant spend every remaining day of his life in prison, faced with the memories of his own monstrosity. And while I do feel that the death penalty is certainly justified, the sentence that this defendant received today, just a little over 4 months from that fateful day, ensures that this defendant will spend the rest of his natural life in prison. These victims did not wish to spend the years required for a death penalty case to reach trial. These victims did not wish to leave the questions of sentencing solely to a jury and to a trial judge. These victims did not wish to live through the extraordinary attention that a death penalty case receives, or the years, likely decades, of appeals that would follow. The swift and firm resolution that was received today honors the wishes of all of the victims' families in our case, and therefore was the right thing to do for the victims in Cherokee County. Often in the criminal justice system, the focus is on the defendant, what he did, why he did it, and what the consequences of his actions will be. While all of this is important, it's more important today to focus on the victims and what this world has lost as a result of the actions of this monster. The victims of this unspeakable crime were diverse. There were women and men and represented numerous ethnicities. There were spouses, parents, siblings, and beloved friends. They lived here, they worked here, they shopped here, and went to church here until that cold and rainy day in March when the defendant deliberately took it all away, leaving immeasurable pain and suffering for those left behind. The horrendous act has affected so many in our community and beyond, and we're hopeful that the sentence imposed today will bring some peace and healing to all of those impacted by this tragedy. It's well known that the defendant continued his vicious attacks in Fulton County. I have no comment about the Fulton County case today. It involves other victims, and I would never comment on a pending case in another jurisdiction. It's simply not the right thing to do. Xiaojie Tan, or Emily, as some of her friends called her, immigrated to the United States from China. She made her home here. She raised her daughter here. She started her businesses here. She was a hard worker and was truly living the American dream. Everyone who knew Miss Tan said that she had the biggest heart and loved fiercely. She would often shower her friends and customers with gifts like her homemade dumplings and her birthday cakes. Her daughter Jamie was the light of her world. Everything Miss Tan did, she did to ensure that Jamie also was able to live the best life she could. Ms. Tan was very proud of her daughter and all of her successes, including graduating recently from the University of Georgia. And on her last day on earth, Ms. Tan was doing exactly what she did every other day, working hard to provide for her family and to save money for the retirement that would never come. Ms. Tan died just 3 days short of her 50th birthday. Born in rural China, Dao Yofeng had worked hard since she was 8 years old to support her family. Like many, she moved to the United States to pursue the American dream, but always planned to return to her homeland once she had saved enough money to start her own business. She had worked at Young's Asian Massage for a few months, and just like the days and weeks before, she went to work on March 16th, not knowing that a twisted, evil gunman would come in and take her life. Ms. Feng leaves behind an 82-year-old mother, Wei Jun Jiao, her brother, Diokan Feng, and her sister, Dao Mei Feng, all who live in China. Delana Yon Gonzalez was a 33-year-old mother of 2. She had a beautiful new baby girl and a young son. She was newly married, she was family-oriented, she was well-loved, and she was always ready to help someone in need. She was a hard worker and worked long hours as a server in our community to help support her family. As a special treat on March the 16th, she and her husband Mario went to Young's Asian Massage for a rare afternoon of relaxation. Little did she know that she would not exit that business alive. She'll never be able to see her children grow up. She will never be able to see her children graduate. She'll never be able to see her children get married. Her husband will never get the chance to grow old with the love of his life. Her mother and her sisters will never get to talk, to shop, or to just hang out with each other ever again. All because of the senseless acts of this defendant. Paul Andre Michaels was a husband, a brother, an uncle, and a friend to many. He was a handyman and could build anything and could fix anything. Mr. Michaels was a United States veteran who proudly served our country in the Army. And while he took his work very serious, he always liked to have fun with his loving wife of 24 years, Bonnie Michaels. He loved being outside and was very much a people person and truly enjoyed talking to others and giving advice. While Mr. Michaels lived in Tucker, he regularly drove to Woodstock to do work for others. He had built a deck for Miss Tan, had put up shelves for her in her shop, and had helped her with her security system. He and his wife were looking forward to retiring together before this defendant robbed them of their dream. Elcias Rosendo Hernandez Ortiz is a survivor and a fighter. A 30-year-old native of Guatemala, Mr. Hernandez Ortiz came to our country to build a better life for himself. He's a mechanic and has his own auto repair shop, which he uses to help support his family here as well as his family in Guatemala. He's alive today by the grace of God, but his life, as well as the life of his wife and his daughters, will never be the same again. Before March 16th, Mr. Hernandez Ortiz loved to sing, but the injuries he sustained at the hands of this defendant have taken away this pleasure. Mr. Hernandez Ortiz's physical and emotional recovery will be long, but with the continued love and support of his family, as well as of our community, he will overcome this terrible tragedy. And while Amy Weber and Wei Lu and Xu Shui Wuao and Liao Xiaojing, Mario Gonzalez Vasquez, and Marcus Lyons didn't suffer any physical injuries that day inside of Young's, they will never forget the terror that they felt when they heard those gunshots. They will never forget the fear that each felt standing inside the business, believing that they were going to be the next to die. and they will never forget the horror that each of them felt when they walked out of the rooms and saw the carnage that the defendant had left behind. The actions of this defendant on March 16th struck fear in the hearts of many and changed the lives of loved ones left behind. It has impacted our entire community and far beyond. As we all know, the horrendous crime occurred during a time of heightened violence nationally against Asian Americans. We are acutely aware of these valid concerns. Local law enforcement and the FBI, in conjunction with our office, thoroughly investigated Aaron Long's actions and motives in committing this crime. In all, Lead Detective Daniel Hayes and his colleagues in the Criminal Investigation Division of the Sheriff's Office in Cherokee County conducted over 40 interviews, executed 24 search warrants, and devoted more than 475 man-hours to this case. Special Agents James Hosty and Bryant Hill of the FBI, along with their colleagues, engaged resources across the country and beyond to assist in locating victims, interviewing witnesses, as well as gathering necessary information and documents identified during the investigation of this case. This comprehensive investigation included a thorough review of the defendant's background and prior interactions with women and minority groups. It's understandable that the immediate perception was that this crime was motivated by a bias or prejudice against the race or ethnicity of the victims based on the sheer number of victims who are of Asian descent. Rest assured, my team and I have thoroughly reviewed all of the evidence gathered by the FBI and the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office and have carefully considered how we might appropriately apply the Georgia hate crime statute based on both ethnicity and gender. Should this case have gone to trial, it was our intentions to move forward with respect to bias against gender. We've considered the diversity of our victims who were shot: 2 Asian women, 1 Hispanic man, 1 Caucasian woman, and 1 Caucasian man, as well as the victims who were present but not physically injured: 3 Asian women, 1 Caucasian woman, 1 African American man, and 1 Hispanic man. We've considered the evidence collected by the FBI and our Sheriff's Office, which failed to show any type of history this defendant had with any form of racism towards any other ethnicity. We considered that even if we proceed to trial and were somehow able to convince a unanimous jury beyond a reasonable doubt that our victims were killed because of their ethnicity or their gender, the Georgia hate crime statute would not result in any additional numbers of years. In fact, it would not result in even 1 additional day of punishment. For all of these reasons, our office opted not to pursue this avenue, recognizing that these were acts of evil and violence against multiple ethnicities and genders. While the applicability of Georgia's hate crime statute to this case can be debated, no one, including the defendant, can credibly debate that Aaron Long is a cold-blooded murderer. These victims and their families are real people who have personally suffered in unspeakable ways because of this defendant. The victims deserve swift and firm justice that holds this murderer fully accountable, and that is exactly what this sentence that was pronounced today gives them. There are many agencies and individuals who should be commended for their actions on March the 16th. First and foremost, our local law enforcement led by Sheriff Frank Reynolds. We are extremely fortunate in Cherokee County to have hardworking men and women who work tirelessly to serve and protect each and every one of us. Our law enforcement responded to this crime within 2 minutes of receiving the 911 call. The Cherokee Sheriff's Office quickly obtained still images of the defendant and posted those on social media, which led to the defendant's identification and apprehension within a few hours of his actions. The solid working relationship among law enforcement agencies throughout Georgia enabled Sheriff Reynolds to call his counterpart in Crisp County when it became apparent that the defendant was headed that way. The willingness and persistence of Sheriff Billy Hancock in Crisp County to immediately engage and help capture the defendant, and the tenacity of the Georgia State Patrol officers in stopping this defendant as he drove down the interstate must be applauded. And finally, the actions of Mr. and Mrs. Long, the parents of the defendant, who made what had to be the most difficult call of their lives to tell law enforcement that it was their son in the surveillance video. Mr. and Ms. Long deserve to be commended for their actions. I'm confident that the actions of these parents in calling law enforcement and assisting them in tracking the defendant, as well as the actions of all of the law enforcement officers involved, saved many additional lives in this matter. After he was captured, the defendant admitted to investigators with the Cherokee Sheriff's Office that he had shot and killed individuals inside of Young's Asian Massage. The defendant's rationale for this crime is sick and twisted and hard for a rational mind to comprehend. He claimed that he was blame shifting and committed the crimes because of his own inability to control his impulses to watch pornography and then act out his sexual urges. The fact is, there's no one to blame for the defendant's failures and sins but the defendant himself. The defendant provided meticulous details surrounding the commission of this crime and callously spoke of the steps that he took in clearing each room in Young's as if these victims were nothing more than an obstacle to overcome his own failures. Each and every one of the lives that were lost that day were valued, and these victims will never be forgotten. Today in court, the defendant again admitted to his actions, which led to the death of 4 people and the serious injury of 1 other person in Cherokee County. While this defendant has answered for his crimes in Cherokee County, he still has pending murder charges in Fulton County. For this reason, we aren't going to discuss any more facts about the case and don't intend to take any questions. It's simply not the right thing to do at this time. In closing, let me say that these murders are one of the most shocking and senseless crimes that I've seen in my career as a prosecutor. And sadly, I've seen quite a bit of unimaginable horror over the past 19 years. We said from the beginning that we would work tirelessly to bring justice for these victims, and that's exactly what we've done. This case has been the #1 priority for my team and me for the past 4 months, as we've worked nonstop on this case since mid-March. Today, through the effective collaboration of law enforcement, prosecution, and the judicial system, we've brought some closure for these families while ensuring that a swift and firm sentence, which confines the defendant behind bars for the remainder of his life. It is our hope that the legal outcome obtained today will bring some measure of peace and healing to all of those that are impacted by this tragedy. Thank you. Lauren. Who is a family member of Xiaojie Tan, would like to make a statement.
My loved ones have asked me to speak on their behalf. Jamie is the daughter of Xiaojie, and since the moment her mother died, what she's been through is unspeakable. But from that day forward, the district attorney's office and Shannon Wallace and the victim's advocate Shelby have been nothing but incredibly compassionate and supportive, and have helped my loved ones through the hardest moments of their life. And they've asked me to give deep, humble, sincere gratitude to the Cherokee County Office of the DA and the sheriffs and the FBI and everybody who has worked on this case and has managed to keep their integrity and humanity and compassion for all of the families that have been affected. So, deep gratitude for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.